conference of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by my colleague, Kate Sheldon, who is the host of this virtual meeting. I can confirm that we have everybody expected in attendance, hopefully in the virtual meeting room. We will proceed to introductions and housekeeping in a moment, but just a couple of points. This meeting is a public meeting, and to meet the new statutory obligations on public meetings will be live streamed to the public to view. To make the meeting run as smooth as possible, can I ask that participants in the virtual room leave your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to the camera. Only unmute when the chair indicates that when you can speak. I will now go around the virtual room and ask individuals to introduce themselves, starting with the chair, Councillor McGowan.
Right, thank you. Yes, Marie-Claire?
The applicants aren't here yet, though, and seeing as we've been having email communications, I can't see them on the list. If I might be wrong, though.
The applicants are here
are they?
and they're in the waiting room. Do you want me to bring them through?
Yes, if you can bring them in, then I think we need to say that bit again, then, Sarah, please.
Yeah,
sorry.
Don't start again.
Yeah, we'll just let them come into the room and join us.
Sorry.
Should all be in the room, Chair.
Right, okay, thank you. So over to you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you everybody for logging into this Zoom video conference for the Licensing Subcommittee. I'm the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by my colleague Kate Sheldon, who is the virtual host for this meeting. I can confirm that we have everyone expected in attendance in the virtual meeting room. We will proceed to introductions.
Sarah, can I just stop you? I think Chris is wanting to say something.
Mute myself, yes. Sorry, Chair. My client, I've been trying to get him an invite today. I'm afraid that my client still hasn't had his invite. That's the premises licensor, so he does want to participate. But as of about 2 minutes ago, he still hasn't had his invite. So I don't know what we can do about that.
Yeah, Kate.
The invite was sent to him at 10:30 this morning.
Well, I'm afraid he hasn't received it. Is there any other way to, obviously, it's important that he participates?
Okay. Meanwhile, I'll try and
Can I give him a joining?
Yeah, we'll hold fire then, because he needs to hear the introduction and everything as well. So.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chris, I've just sent him I forwarded him my invite as well, just in case Kate doesn't get through, to see if it can come from a different angle.
Thank you. I'll give him a call now and ask him to check.
I've sent it once again.
Thank you. He's just received it. He's just typing in the information now to join. Thank you.
It's his first time using Zoom. Download from app.
Chris, has he received it? Is he having any problems still, or?
We, believe it or not, we did try a dry run a few days ago, and it worked all right there. So I do apologise. Thank you for the
No,
patience.
it's okay.
Mr. Khan is just, I can hear Mr. Khan having a discussion with his technical advisor, otherwise known as Mrs.
Oh, he's coming in now. We've got him.
I do apologise.
No, it's nice. No, these things
They are
happen.
moving forward. If I could have 60 seconds, I'll update you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Mr. Khan, can you hear us? You can't hear. You're not muted, but I can't hear you.
He's named me because he's gone through my link by the looks of it.
Yes, yeah. But I can't hear him speaking, so
He'll have to try and read. Oh no, he's changed it now. That's it.
yeah. but it's not on mute, which is the bit that's worrying me now.
We think Mr. Khan just selected the wrong audio there. So he's going to log off back in very quickly and
Okay.
select the other audio option. That will hopefully bring him in.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Khan. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll let you get settled.
I'm sorry?
I'll let you get settled
Okay,
wherever
yeah.
you're going to.
Right, give me a minute, please.
Yeah.
I'm not
Thank you
very
for your patience, Chair. Thank you.
sorry to keep you waiting.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay then. So we'll start again. So over to you, Sarah, to do the start introduction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for logging into this Zoom video conference of the Licensing Subcommittee. I am the Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I am assisted by my colleague Kate Sheldon, who is the host for this virtual meeting. I can confirm that we have everyone expected in attendance in the virtual meeting room. We will proceed to introductions and housekeeping in a moment, but just a couple of points. This meeting is a public meeting, and to meet the new statutory obligations on public meetings will be live streamed to the public to view. To make the meeting run as smooth as possible, can I please ask that participants in the virtual room leave your microphone on mute when you are not speaking? When you want to speak, please raise your hand to the camera. Only unmute when the chair indicates that you can speak. I will now go around the virtual room and ask individuals to introduce themselves, starting with the chair, Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, Councillor Karen McGowan, I'm chairing this meeting today. Do you want me to take over now, Sarah? As in going,
You
I'll
can
ask
do,
Vicky.
yeah, to go
Yeah.
around, yeah.
Okay, so Vicky,
Councillor Vicky Priestley.
I hope you all don't mind if I do first names. I know we've got two Vickies, but I'll do that. Ruth.
Councillor Ruth Mercer, sitting on the licensing committee.
Thank you. Marie-Claire.
Hi, Marie-Claire Frankie, solicitor to the subcommittee.
Jane.
Hi, my name's Jane Goff. I'm from the licensing service and we'll be presenting today's report.
Thank you. Julie.
Good afternoon, Julie Haig, Safeguarding Licensing Manager and the applicant.
Thank you. Maureen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maureen Hannafy and I'm observing proceedings today, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Magna. Sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Magdalena Boo. I'm a Health Improvement Principal in the Office of the Director of Public Health.
Thank you. Catherine.
Hello, I'm Catherine Jarvis and I'm the Licensing Enforcement Officer for South Yorkshire Police. I've made representations as well.
Thank you. Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Marsden and I'm representing Sheffield Trading Standards.
Thank you. Christopher.
Good afternoon, my name is Christopher Grunert. I'm a solicitor representing the respondent premises licence holder, Mr. Khan.
Hello, Mr. Khan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Mr. Basharik Khan from 87 Hanging Water Road, the premises licence holder.
Thank you very much. Vicky Tulip.
Hi, I'm Vicky Tulip. I'm a local resident.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Paul Baxter Gibson.
Hi, I'm Paul Baxter Gibson. I'm the Head of Projects and Programme Management for BT and I'm a local resident representing Mr. Khan also.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So it's over to you, Marie-Claire, to outline the process for us today.
Chair, I've just got a little bit more, sorry, on the introduction. Is that all right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Okay, sorry. It's just a little bit of housekeeping, that's all. It's just to check that everybody's got the following documents. So has everybody got the agenda pack? And has everybody received the additional information that was emailed out? Okay. So just to confirm, at the end of this hearing, the committee will deliberate in private and they will come to a decision and you will be informed in writing of the decision. So that's it. So I'll hand back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's over to you, Marie-Claire, for the procedure.
Yes, Chair. I'm just reading from the papers at page 64, which details the procedure we're going to follow today. So at point 5, it states that the licensing officer will introduce the report. This morning, that's Jane. Questions concerning the report can be asked by members, the applicant, and any other parties. The licensing officer will then introduce the applicant for review. So today that's safeguarding, and they'll be asked to detail their application. Members can ask questions. The licensing officer will then in turn introduce the representatives for the other responsible authorities who are here, who will be asked to detail their relevant representations. Again, you can ask questions. With the leave of the chair, the licensee or representative may cross-examine the representatives of the applicant for review or the other responsible authorities. It'll then be over to the licensee or nominated representative to respond to the application and to the other representations that have been made. The licensee can then be asked questions by yourself and with the leave of you, Chair, from the other parties present. The applicant, safeguarding, will be given the opportunity to sum up. The representatives for the responsible authorities will be given the opportunity to sum up. And then finally, the licensee will be given the opportunity to sum up. The licensing officer will detail the options. And then, as Sarah's just said, there'll be a private session for members to take legal advice and to consider the application. A couple of additional points, Chair, are that at any point during the process this morning, you can request legal advice. Again, it can be an open session or private. And the hearing is in public this morning. It is being live streamed. But in terms of who's in the virtual room, only these people are in the virtual room. Okay, I think that's it, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So it's over to Jane for the officer's report, please.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just reading it off a screen to the side of my laptop, so I'm not looking at you for any good reason. So I'm reading off here, so bear with me. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. This is the review hearing for Hanging Water Stores, 87 Hanging Water Road, Sheffield S11 S7ER, beg your pardon. So the licensing service received the application submitted by Sheffield Safeguarding Children's Partnership on the 29th of July 2020 on the grounds of prevention of crime and disorder and the protection of children from harm. Further review evidence and support documents were included in Appendix A, which you'll be able to find in your pack, and the current premises licenses in Appendix B. The reasons for referral today are outlined in the review documents, and we had further representations submitted from the Officer of the Director of Public Health, South Yorkshire Police and Sheffield Trading Standards. In addition to these representations, we also received 14 letters of support from local residents who all live in the surrounding area to the premises, and they've all detailed their reasons why they're in favour for the premises license holder to maintain his license today. These are all detailed at Appendix D. Everyone's been invited to the hearing. Unfortunately, I've only had 2 responses from the local residents, 2 of which have attended today. We've had 2 further people that couldn't attend, but we've not had any further response from any others, unfortunately. So if you're happy, Chair, I'll skip straight through section 4, 5 and 6, just so that you will have all read that in your own time. Straight to section 7 for the appeals, in that the Licensing Act 2003, section 181 and schedule 5 makes provision for appeals to be made by the applicant, the holder of the premises licence, and those making any representations against the decision of the licensing authority to the Magistrates Court. So the recommendations today, Chair, is that members carefully consider the application for review along with any other representations made and take such steps as detailed in paragraph 5.2 of the report that the committee consider necessary for the promotion of the licensing objectives. That's all, Chair, thanks.
Thank you very much. Is everybody happy with that report that's just been given by Jane, that for accuracy, that is correct? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move back to you, Jane, for you to introduce in turn representatives for responsible authorities and interested parties, as it says in the process. No? All right.
The applicant for review first. So first off, it would be Julie from Safeguarding as the applicant for review.
All right, Steve says the licensing officer will introduce. Okay, that's fine then. So over to you, Julie, for you to introduce your report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair, I thought if it's okay with you, for the benefit of people who aren't familiar with my role or either what the Sheffield Safeguarding Children's Partnership is in relation to licensed premises, I thought I'd just give some context first so that people understand where we're coming from as an organisation. So I work as the licensing manager in Sheffield. I've been here in this role for 15 years, and it's my job to execute the statutory duties for an organisation called the Safeguarding Children Partnership. That partnership is a statutory body. It involves senior representatives of key agencies in Sheffield, such as health, police, education, housing, youth justice, social care. And it's the job of that organisation, the Safeguarding Partnership, to make sure safeguarding arrangements are effective across the city. So that's in whatever context children are in, it's the work of the partnership to make sure safeguarding is implemented wherever children go. The Safeguarding Partnership regards the role of licensees as a significant one in Sheffield. We have a strong partnership with the licensed trade, and we work together to protect children and young people so that when they go out of their family homes into places, including licensed places, children are safe. So where possible, we always aim primarily to work with licensed operators to support them in promoting the core objective under the Licensing Act to protect children from harm. So we invest quite a lot of time and energy into partnership work. The safeguarding approach we take in Sheffield extends nationally now. So, for example, I advise regional and national organisations including the University of Bedfordshire's UK Advisory and Implementation Panel for Contextual Safeguarding, the National Association of Licensing Enforcement Officers, National Working Group for Tackling Child Exploitation. What we do is recognise nationally as a positive way to work with the business community to protect children. And we're also interested in protecting businesses as well. So it's about positive engagement and protecting children and protecting local businesses. You've already seen from colleagues in public health who have confirmed in their representation that this partnership that's taken in Sheffield is effective. However, it can only work if the management at the premises, so that's the licence holder or the designated premises supervisor, or even another appointed such responsible person at a premises, shows an interest in engaging and some commitment to achieving standards of due diligence. And unfortunately, we've had no such response from the management at this premises, even after trying for a period that spans 2 years. It's extremely disappointing, and I think significant that the first ever response the Safeguarding Partnership has had from the premises management at Hanging Water Stores came literally within a few hours of having served the application to review the licence. I would emphasise it's very unusual for the Safeguarding Partnership to seek a licence review. That's to say, such is the seriousness of the matters raised to us that we're here today to address child protection concerns at a premises on the grounds that the management has made no attempt until today whatsoever to address those concerns. Our attempts to engage in partnership with the premises management, they're set out in the chronology in the review. Would you like me to go through those, Chair?
Yeah, if you could please, yeah.
Okay, so going back to our initial engagement with the premises or attempt, that was back in May 2018, when I attended a joint visit to the shop with a police representative, that was Miss Topham, and we then spoke to Mrs. Khan, who's the wife of the licence holder. She was in charge of the shop at the time of the visit. And the advice issued was to improve staff vigilance and training. That was followed up in writing with an offer of free training, multi-agency training for a course in July 2018. A copy of that letter, which sets out the advice we gave and the offer of the free training, is at Annex 1. At that visit, during that visit, Mrs. Khan couldn't evidence a refusals log. So a template was provided by the police colleague. And that's why we do those visits. Usually, if we get a complaint or an issue is raised, we will go and visit, see what help the premises need and try to raise the standards. In June 2018, Trading Standards made a compliance check at the premises just to see if they were operating an age verification scheme. Was it being implemented? They sent in a secret shopper who was chosen because they looked particularly young of age, so they looked under the age of 18. Unfortunately, this person wasn't challenged or asked for ID. Subsequently, in July, no one from the shop attended the training that has been on offer, and I hadn't had any response to the advice or the letter that we sent trying to engage with the shop. So that's back in 2018. If I may, Chair, I think it's worth explaining what the training is. It's something that we provide to licensed operators. It's provided by officers from Safeguarding, so myself, Trading Standards, police, so all of these responsible authorities invest their time. It's free of charge and it takes just 3 hours to complete. So it's a short, compact session to support licensed operators, to help them run responsibly and to maintain those important standards of competency that we look for in Sheffield. Unfortunately, there was no evidence of any interest from the premises management either in doing the training or in the concerns that we were raising at that time. Subsequently, between February and June this year, the Safeguarding Partnership received another 3 reports that underage sales were routinely taking place at the shop. One incident involved a child being hospitalised after purchasing alcohol and consuming it from the shop. On a different occasion, a parent carer reported they had found their child intoxicated after buying and consuming alcohol at the premises. These complaints are as follows. So on the 13th of February, we received a complaint. It came through the council licensing service, referred on to safeguarding. A member of the public, the local community, was saying that the shop sells alcohol to children as young as 14 and has a reputation for underage sales. So there's a copy of that complaint at Annex 3. On the 19th of February, myself and Miss Topham from Police Licensing did a joint visit to investigate the complaint. This is all standard procedures. This is how we treat any premises. And to look into an incident that had been reported on the 3rd of February, that the 14-year-old had been hospitalised after drinking Malibu and vodka. At that visit, neither the DPS or the licence holder were present, and so we spoke to Mrs. Fatima Khan, who was in charge of the shop at that time, and informed us that the licence holder, Mr. Khan, was out of the country. May I add, Chair, it's not disputed, never has been, that Mr. Khan was out of the country. When we explained the reason for the visit, which was the incident with the child, and requested to look at the CCTV, Mrs. Khan explained that it wasn't possible to look at the CCTV because she couldn't access it. It was locked in a cellar and she didn't have a key. CCTV is often critical to an investigation. It helps us view the incident, what happened. Usually we can see whether checks were made, whether questions were asked, whether a challenge had been made by staff. But unfortunately, we weren't given access to any kind of evidence to support the investigation. Ms. Topham and I provided Mrs. Khan with our contact details and emphasised that Mr. Khan needs to contact us when he returns from abroad. We then discussed the safeguarding concerns with Mrs. Khan and asked her to ensure that with immediate effect, all staff were refresher trained to verify age and improve their vigilance. During the visit, Ms. Topham provided Mrs. Khan with an age verification scheme pack. So that's a standard pack that we give out to licensees. It includes posters, Challenge 25 posters, refusals logs, and a set of criteria for what they need to do to operate what we would describe as an acceptable and recognised age verification scheme. So things like staff training records and so forth. That included another refusals log. So Mrs. Khan was given another refusals log as there was no recognised system for recording refusals in place. Mrs. Khan actually showed us a piece of paper, like a scrap of paper on which some refusals had been made back in January that year. So there's no recognised or acceptable form of refusals again. On the 20th of March, I wrote to the licence holder to confirm the advice that had been issued verbally and to again offer assistance. I received no response to that letter or to a telephone attempted telephone contact. On the 15th of May, I then received an email complaint from a social worker who was representing the carer of a child. That's at Annex 5. I was unable to undertake a premises visit because we then were into lockdown restrictions, and so I wrote to the licence holder and designated premises supervisor, a copy of that letter is at Annex 6, expressing concerns and requiring immediate action to address the risks. I again invited contact, offered assistance to help the premises management improve their safeguarding practice. Along with my letter, I sent another information pack to make sure they got everything they needed. in terms of refusals logs, a safeguarding risk assessment and so forth. I received, again, no response. I then received a complaint on the 16th of June from the licensing service, the council's licensing service. This time the complaint was from a school teacher who was concerned that the shop is making underage sales. I contacted the complainant, had a telephone discussion with her and asked her to put her concerns in writing to the Safeguarding Children Partnership, which she did. On the 24th of June, I again wrote to the DPS, so we're still in lockdown here. I wrote to the DPS and licence holder requesting they contact me to discuss safeguarding concerns. Again, no response to my letter, which is at Annex 7. On the 6th of July, I received a letter from the teacher, which was confirming the conversation and the issues that she was concerned about, as logged on the 16th of June. At this point, Chair, I would reiterate to the committee that wherever possible, we take a partnership approach, and that it is in fact the majority of the cases that we come across where there are safeguarding issues raised to premises managers, we usually get a really prompt, positive response from premises managers. So when underage sales lead to serious incidents such as this, the usual response from a licensed operator would be that they are proactive, they're keen to work with us, they're usually quite proactive in terms of getting their staff retrained or refresher trained, taking the advice, implementing the systems. So it's unusual to get this kind of response, or rather to get no response, and it's unusual for us to be in this position. So the response from this particular licence holder is neither typical nor acceptable in terms of demonstrating due diligence or any kind of commitment towards acceptable safeguarding standards. Underage drinking is dangerous. There are well-established links between antisocial behaviour, substance misuse, unsafe, sexual and other behaviours occurring when young people drink. And this is why the responsible authorities take such a serious view of the concerns raised by the complainants and of the evidence of inconsistent and poor practice which we have found ourselves through the investigations. Through the course of this hearing, you may be presented with suggestions that try to persuade you to normalise and minimise underage drinking. And I would ask the committee to please bear in mind the seriousness of the incidents that have been reported by the complainants, who are not just casual bystanders. They are people who live in the local community. Some of them have professional expertise in safeguarding. They're foster parents, teacher, social care staff. So the significance and consequences of underage drinking are well documented, not just locally, but nationally. And I believe my colleague in public health will speak to that. You may also hear from the respondent that people in the local community, they don't want to lose their corner shop. I have seen the letters. People clearly appear frightened of losing the convenience shop or that it will close. I can see clearly Mr. Khan is regarded by his customers as friendly and popular. And I would emphasise it's the friendliness of Mr. Khan and his family is not the fact in dispute. It's not the issue. The issue is that in response to any attempt we've tried to engage with the licence holder or the DPS, we've had no response. The issue is that we could focus here today on the escalating concerns at the premises, which have been consistently, repeatedly ignored by the premises management. I'm mindful that in response to the licence review application, the licence holder has proposed some conditions to offer you some reassurance that the safeguarding practice at the premises will improve. So that's what we have from the respondent, a number of licence conditions offered. My comments on this is I remain doubtful that the act of adding conditions to the licence will address the concerns for the reasons we've discussed, which is that fundamentally the concerns relate to an unacceptable level of management and staff competence currently. There's nothing, as I see it, being offered now in those conditions that's different to what we were asking for, asking the premises management to do, but which neither the licence holder nor the DPS have to this date implemented. Likewise, despite there being a mandatory condition on licences selling alcohol for a recognised age verification scheme to be in place, this hasn't consistently been complied with, and I think consistency is an issue. I note that the premises management have, at the 11th hour, provided some evidence of the fact they've recently undertaken some training. Contrary to providing me with reassurance, again, that suggests that the premises management only appears to respond when there's pressure. There's no reassurance that any conditions will be sustained, any operational standards are going to be managed in a different way to what they have been in the past by the DPS or current licence holder. The Safeguarding Partnership, therefore, is not in a position to recommend a modification of conditions as a sole resolution, because implementation of conditions relies on the compliance and commitment of the premises management, and I think therein lies the issue. If, however, the committee is minded to determine a modification, the Safeguarding Partnership would suggest that at least this should include measures to address the concerns relating to the competence of the management and staff, such as a change of DPS or a personal licence holder to be on site at all times. So there's somebody qualified, somebody consistent, somebody who's going to change the management style and improve it. Finally, the Licensing Act 2003 requires licensees and their designated premises supervisors to demonstrate due diligence for the core objectives of the Licensing Act, including the protection of children from harm. We're here today because the premises management has failed to demonstrate this or respond in any way to the serious safeguarding risks reported. So on these grounds, the Safeguarding Children Partnership is here to ask the licensing subcommittee today to take positive action to manage the risk associated with alcohol sales at the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Julie. So I'm going to ask members if you've got any questions on what you've heard. Okay, Ruth? Is that a no from both of you at the moment? Right, okay, thank you. So, Marie-Claire, am I okay now to go and ask the other representatives? Oh, sorry, Ruth, you want to ask?
Yes, it may or may not be a question for you, Julie, but I noticed that there was an attempt to get the CCTV coverage, but Mrs. Khan was unable to access the cellar. And later on in the notes in the appendix, it said that it was you were unable, or somebody was unable to get any CCTV coverage due to operational difficulties.
Yes, I understand that for various reasons, I think the police had tried to go back to the premises, and I think my colleague Catherine might be able to throw some light on that.
Yes, Catherine, do you want to come in?
Hi, yes, it was part of my submissions for the review. Yes, Cheryl Topham, prior to myself taking over at the beginning of March, had requested the duty sergeant for the area to attend and collect the CCTV footage. The following day, when we were led to believe that Mr. Khan would be back from his trip. But unfortunately, yes, it was due to operational difficulties. They were unable to go on that weekend, and then we were pretty much into the lockdown with the COVID restrictions, which obviously it made things a lot more difficult to then go back out and get that in those early stages.
So is the CCTV coverage still available, or has it not been sought subsequently, or has it gone out of date, or what's happened with the original footage?
I had continued to ask our officers as and when they were then able to go out and retrieve the CCTV footage. But unfortunately, as I say, it did lead to many months before anybody could go back out again. And I believe the license was only, we weren't, there wasn't actually anything on the license to specify that they had to keep it for a certain length of time. I think the solicitors are suggesting a 28 days will be added to the license that they would keep it for, but there was nothing current on the license.
Thank you.
If I may, Chair, what that was one of the issues because of the timing of the complaints coming in, are being able to arrange a multi-agency visit. We were already almost at the point where even if not all CCTV systems retain images for even 28 days, some only retain them for 2 weeks and so forth. We were unable to get clarification from Mrs. Khan when we were asking how long the CCTV would retain a recording before it expired. So there were some unanswered questions around it that we really weren't able to resolve quickly enough. Had the CCTV lasted for 28 days, we were still up against that that tight deadline, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rose. Julie, I just want to ask a question about the ID. What I'm just wanting to get clear is the incidence them not asking for ID for young people, or is it not spotting false ID, like them using an ID that's someone else's to make them older? So is it a bit of both, or is it one or the other?
Chair, that's a good question, and that is the first question that we start discussions. Had we had any engagement with Mr. Khan or the DPS, if we would have had those conversations, because that's the whole reason we try to engage. We try to find out, you know, is there an issue with false ID? Can we look at your refusals? How many times are you making refusals? Sometimes in the past, if a shop has had particular problems at certain times of day in terms of young people trying to buy alcohol. So for example, on a Friday night between 7 p.m. and 9, if we see that there's a lot of refusals recorded for young people, then in the past sometimes police would do drive-bys, or we would advise the shop manager to put on extra staff at that time because it's a pinch point. So those conversations about false ID, about training, about how we can, you know, how we can resolve the problem never happened. So in short, I can't answer because we weren't able to have those conversations because the premises management wouldn't engage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, Marie-Claire, have you got any questions at this point? No? And yeah, Rose, you want to come back in?
Yeah, it's a generic question. I'm not sure if Marie-Claire can answer this or if it's Julie Haig, and it's going back to the CCTV again. Is there a condition in licensing that the person in charge of premises at the time needs to be able to access the CCTV so that a situation like this doesn't arise? If the licensee is not present, this CCTV footage can still be sought.
Go on, sorry, whoever's, I don't mind. Julie?
There is the potential for such a condition. So sometimes, for example, new licenses, that's something that the police might ask for, and usually people will agree because CCTV has a lot of benefits for protecting people in the shop as well, and it can provide good evidence of what actually happened. So if people are threatening, or you know, it gives good evidence. It's not on some of the older licenses. I understand Mr. Khan's been at the shop for something like 30 years. So his license, because it's never been reviewed or changed, won't have brought any of the more modern and in my opinion, more helpful conditions. So there was no legal requirement. That doesn't stop a responsible operator from installing CCTV to you know, to update the systems at the premises. It does have a cost attached to it, but it also has a value in terms of diligence, if that makes sense.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
If I can just add, Councillor, so there are no sort of standard licensing conditions that are applied across the board. Every condition is unique to each on each situation and to each premises. So yeah, as Julie says, this particular premises doesn't have any conditions relating to CCTV. There are conditions that can be added, but there are none in this case.
Okay, Marie-Claire, can I just ask you, do we move, is it okay now to move on to the representatives that are here? I'm just sorry, I'm just trying to clarify the process because it's not as clear as I thought it was in the written down version, and whether Chris and the applicant, whether they have an opportunity to ask questions at this point.
It's with the leave of yourself. If you're happy for them to ask any questions that they have of Julie, then that's fine now.
Yeah, Chris, or Mr. Khan, have you got any questions you want to ask at this stage?
I do have a few questions, Chair. Thank you very much. Back to Julie. As you said, Mr. Khan's had this licence or been at these premises for quite a long period of time. I think it was 1987, his family, and he took over. Your first contact with the premises was 2018, is that correct?
That's correct.
So in the preceding 21 years, no issues, no intelligence, nothing to bring this premises to your attention whatsoever?
Bearing in mind the licensing legislation to require licensees to protect children changed in 2005. So the requirements were different, I think, when Mr. Khan started his license career in the shop, as opposed to the fact that the requirements changed in 2005.
But selling alcohol to a child or proxy sales has always been illegal, hasn't it, Julie? And that's the issue today.
There's always been a restriction on alcohol sales in terms of age. There hasn't been a requirement for licensees to protect children from harm until 2005, and that's specifically physical, moral and psychological harm. That came in 2005. And I think what we've been trying to do is to work with the licensed operators to update their thinking and their system in relation to what that actually means.
So you've had no contact since 1987, no contact since 2005 until
31 years, Chris.
For that issue. You stated in your evidence just then that it was very unusual for your approaches to be either ignored or not followed through, and that was not normal, and that it was you made quite a focus on that. In the bundle, can I take you to page 29 of the bundle? Do you have a copy of the bundle in front of you?
Yeah. Okay.
Engagement with your service and promotion and protection of children from harm is an absolute, and nothing that I say is trying to undermine that. But your statement to the committee was very unusual, unheard of almost, and trying to paint my client as some sort of outlier. But from your register at page 29, half the people haven't signed in.
Yeah.
Mr. Khan, 50% of the people, if not more, haven't signed into your course.
Yeah, I would just ask the committee to give some context to that register, which is we offer the training to absolutely everybody. So new applicants, the training isn't only offered to people who have significant problems at their premises. It's something that's offered to new operators, new applicants, people who we offer it to absolutely everybody we can in Sheffield.
But that wasn't your point, Julie. Your point was that not engaging with you. This is an offer of engagement that you said, Mr. Khan, absolutely very unusual that he didn't engage. Half the people on just that course as an example, and I have to state from personal experience, because I've attended your course, which was, I don't malign your course at all. Attendance is not good. It is, I think 50% is about, appears to be quite a fair sort of attendance. It's a one letter in 2018, and he didn't attend. That is your non-engagement for 2018. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. No response whatsoever. No telephone call. No engagement. No interest. Yes, that's correct.
You're adding quite a few. No attendance. I think you'll have to stop at really, Julia.
Yeah, that's fine. No attendance.
You attended in February 2020 for the second occasion. So around about 18 months later, I give or take a few months, you came back in February, beginning of February 2020, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And in February 2020, you saw evidence of ID checks that had taken place in January 2020.
Can I just check, are you referring to the scrap of paper that was passed to us as a form of a refusals log?
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yes.
saw evidence of you didn't like the format, and I'm not asking you to applaud the format, but in your visit in 2020, which followed up your next one after 2018, where you'd given advice, you saw in the weeks preceding your visit evidence of the premises doing test purchases, ID checks.
If I may just explain, we were quite concerned that a premises in that location didn't have any refusals other than a couple that were on a scrap of paper. So we would expect a busy corner shop in that location to have more than just a couple that was scribbled on the paper, and which is why we explained to Mrs. Khan it needed to improve. Had it been satisfactory and to the standard that we normally get in our shops, we would have commended it. The reason we responded by offering another refusals template was that it was neither being managed. The purpose of a refusals log is clear data for a manager to look at. So they look at which staff are making a refusal, what time the refusals are being made so that they can identify patterns, what reasons refusals are being made, and so forth. So the refusals log is not just a document to evidence good practice, it's actually used as a management tool to help inform the manager. For example, if there's one member of staff who isn't making refusals, that will show up in a refusals log. If there's a particular time of day where children are crowding to the shop and overwhelming staff, that would show up in a refusals log. So a slip of paper with scribbled comments on and no other data is an absolutely unacceptable document to try to pass off as a refusals log.
How many members of staff are there at the premises?
My understanding is it's a family-run premises, and so different people, when we tried to get that information from Mrs. Khan, she said that a couple of her sons work there, I think, and Mr. Khan works there when he's available.
Yeah. So your suggestion to you're not saying to the committee that they made up those January comments. You just didn't agree with the format or the detail.
No, I'm not saying that they made them up. I'm saying that they were the standard did not meet the criteria that we have given to Mr. Khan several times as to what constitutes a recognised age verification scheme, and is recognised by safeguarding
when you say
standards
several times, Julie,
and
just to be clear, when you say several times, you mean once?
No, more than once on each visit.
I'm sorry, in 2018.
And as I've said,
in 2018, your visit before was only once before.
No, it's not. I'm sorry, but you're misrepresenting what I said there, Chris. What I said and what I've just given in the submission was that each time via post during visits, documents and materials have been provided to improve the recording of refusals each time, each contact.
Right. So just turning back the CCTV, just to clarify, and I think councillors have clarified this, but I just want to double check with yourself. It wasn't a position where the premises refused to give CCTV. They explained they couldn't at the time of your visit, and I'm grateful you accept that Mr. Khan wasn't there, and that was the reason given, and that his return date was accurately described to the responsible authorities, and you were invited to return to collect that CCTV at that stage. That was the position from the shop.
I was told. My wife told them. Sorry.
If we could just let Julie answer that question, thanks.
Yes, that was the position that Mrs. Khan would ask Mr. Khan to contact the police and make arrangements for the CCTV to be collected. And as I understand it, that contact never happened.
Right, so that's slightly different to the police's version, but I'll talk to Ms. Jarvis. So I appreciate Cheryl Topham isn't with us today, but that's not what Cheryl Topham's comments say. That's slightly different. You have written to the premises 3 times during lockdown. Is that correct?
Yes.
And without prying too much, you were sticking stamps on and popping those in the letterbox yourself, were you? How were you operating during that period yourself?
How I was operating is things were going out as all post does through the post. We never have problems with the council's postal system. Other recipients receive the post, and so there's no reason to think that posting a letter out or information would be a problem with this particular premises. I did worry that the telephone number I was using was perhaps defunct because I never managed to get an answer. However, the day after serving the review application, I did receive a telephone call from Mr. Khan on the number I had been ringing. So I've no reason to think that telephone or Royal Mail would fail to serve, as it usually does. However, I hand delivered the review papers because I was concerned that there may be a dispute about whether they'd been received or not. Because
so the first time you hand deliver something to Mr. Khan, his reaction's immediate?
The first time I hand deliver a review, yes.
Yes. Thanks very much. And you say now that you telephoned the shop, because I didn't see that in any of your evidence.
Yeah, I think I refer to the fact in one of my letters that I've been trying to contact Mr. Khan. I had been ringing the shop, but I can't prove that.
No, I'm not, Ms. Hager, it's certainly not. You post letters, and in good faith, I hear all the comments. Certainly not suggesting that you're fabricating any of that. I just wanted to clarify whenever these letters perhaps have been hand delivered. I just wanted to check for that, because it is my client's position. You've probably discerned in your answers that those letters were never received, unfortunately. Since the 2021s during the COVID situation, his first contact was with you personally. They're all the questions I have. But thank you very much, Ms. Hager, and obviously I've provided some. If I could, the sort of last minute reference to conditions and further documents, a trading document. It is true that they were emailed to you, about 10 days ago, the conditions, and you responded to them yesterday afternoon. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct. And the reason for the delay, as I explained, is I work part-time, but the second reason is that I explained to you, I think in our discussion, I would not be able to agree or presume any kind of agreement. That is for the licensing committee to determine and consider.
I appreciate that. It's just that you suggesting that my client's doing everything at the last minute. I think it's slightly disingenuous to not include the fact that your own responses were very late and we were reacting to discussions with you. That's my only point. I just want you to confirm for the committee, as you have, thank you, that your actual response to our proposed conditions was yesterday afternoon. Thank you. They're all the questions really I have for Ms. Haig. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I'm going to now move to reports from the representatives. So I'm going to ask, what I'm planning to do is to take each person, so for Public Health, South Yorkshire Police and Sheffield Trading Standards, each to give the reports, and then we'll ask the questions of all 3 of them, if that's okay. So Magna, do you want to go?
Yes, I have to look away from you because I have to go to another screen. So my apologies. I
think that is worth saying for everybody. I've got another screen as well, so I don't want people to think I'm not listening, but I keep referring to the report on another screen.
So we wrote a letter regarding the concern we had about the reports of facilitating underage drinking. And we wanted to write the letter as public health because, as Julie said, some people may consider underage drinking or buying alcohol underage as a rite of passage, or they may think it's a harmless. They may think that other people have done it, and therefore what's the issue? So we wanted to just very firmly make clear that there is a very serious issue, and there are potentially very serious impacts of alcohol related harm amongst young people. So we refer to the Chief Medical Officer stating that children should remain alcohol free up to the age of 18. If they do drink alcohol, it shouldn't be at least until the age of 15, and it should be in a supervised environment and no more than once a week. And that guidance from the Chief Medical Officer was based on a body of evidence that drinking at a young age, and heavy and regular drinking in particular, can result in physical and mental health problems, impair brain development, and put children at risk of alcohol-related accident or injury. It's associated with missing or falling behind at school, violence and antisocial behaviour, and unsafe sexual behaviour. So it is very, very serious for young people to drink underage. And Public Health England state that children who drink early are more likely to become frequent and binge drinkers, and it's associated with school and educational problems, unprotected sex, consumption of illicit drugs, violence, and drinking problems later in life. So the drinking of alcohol is not only harmful in and of itself, it's what it can potentially lead to that is an issue. And we were particularly concerned by the report that more vulnerable children, so children in foster care, had been facilitated into underage drinking. So just wanted to stress that some children may have more vulnerabilities than other children. They may have had adverse childhood experiences. They may be less able to withstand episodes of underage drinking, so to take that into consideration. And we know from Every Child Matters surveys that young people in Sheffield are regularly exposed to alcohol, and almost 1 in 5 underage young people are able to access alcohol from licensed retailers, and 1 in 5, more than 1 in 5, are drinking regularly to excess and harmful levels. So it's very important as a city that we do what we can, and that we do the utmost to protect our young people. That data is quite old, 16, 17. So, you know, things may have changed since then, but that was the latest data I was able to access. But that does show that it's not something we're getting right yet, despite all our very good partnerships. I looked at the data from Young People's Drug and Alcohol Treatment Services, and 53% of the young people in local treatment services were needing support for alcohol as a substance of misuse. So just to say that this is 15 to 17-year-olds who already have a problematic relationship with alcohol. And we know from clinicians that having available and affordable alcohol can make it very difficult for young people, and for everybody, in fact, older people, to address their difficulties, which is why as public health, we're always very careful to make representation about available and affordable alcohol in general, not just underage sales, because we know that that can be that can make it very difficult for people with alcohol problems to move on. We were very concerned by the statement that the actions of the premise led to the hospitalisation of a young person, and took that extremely seriously. And I just wanted to highlight how unusual that is in Sheffield. Sheffield's the only authority in Yorkshire and Humber which is green for all 3 alcohol emission under 18 indicators, and that's on the current available data from the local alcohol profiles for England. And I've showed that in my letter, I've shown where we're green, and that success is due to partnership work. So it's the Sheffield Safeguarding Partnership, licensing, the drug alcohol team, Sheffield Public Health, the police I haven't mentioned, sorry, that was an oversight. But that partnership work on prevention, education, regulation, enforcement, and effective treatment services is really important. The data shows hospitalisation of young people for alcohol is very rare, and we would want to keep it rare, because that is a sort of adverse event that we don't want for our young people. So just to finish by saying we do view this extremely seriously. We do believe in the partnership approach, and we read in the documentation that Sheffield Safeguarding Partnership had tried and failed to engage the premise or DPS in education and partnership approach. We've provided evidence of the immediate and long-lasting damage that irresponsible sales can cause young people, and we would support licensing committee in its decision-making on this issue. We haven't recommended any particular decision or conditions because that's not our area of expertise, but we do advise that it's taken very, very seriously by all concerned, and that it is understood that underage drinking and facilitating underage drinking does have serious impacts on young people at the time of drinking, but also we know that for some people those impacts are long term and can lead to quite a serious set of events later in life. So thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask now Catherine Jarvis if you can come in for South Yorkshire, please. Give your statement.
Hello, Chair. Can I just state that my involvement directly with this premise has been, well, I haven't personally had any contact. It was my colleague prior to me, Cheryl Topham. She left the position at the end of February, and then I took over at the beginning of March. So I'll briefly go through the statements from Cheryl if I can. So again, the premise came to the attention. Sorry?
You get me the charger, please, from downstairs.
Oh. Sorry, Mr. Khan, we can hear everything that you're saying.
Sorry,
So
if
you want to put your microphone on mute, that would help. Thank you. Yeah, Catherine, if you want to carry on.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so the premise first came to our attention also in May of 2018, where we'd received a complaint from a member of the public with concerns that school children in their uniform were being served alcohol at the premise. We visited, well, Cheryl Topham and Julie Haig both visited the premise to conduct the licensing check, and the wife of the premise licence holder was spoken to. The majority of procedures all seem to be in place except for the refusals log, which was provided by Cheryl for them, and the how to use that refusals log was explained to them and the reasons behind it. Second time that the premise then came to our attention, we had 2 reports in February of 2020. One of those was in relation to a child of aged 14 being hospitalised after consuming a vodka and Malibu at the store, and obviously she was quite poorly in hospital. So this prompted a second visit by Cheryl Topham and Julie Haig to the premise, where they then again spoke to Mrs. Khan. She didn't have access to the CCTV, and I appreciate it has been discussed that there is no condition on the licence to specify that they have to provide CCTV or that they have to provide access to responsible authorities. You know, it was very good that they did have the CCTV, but the fact that they weren't able to access it, especially when we had such a serious incident that we needed to view that footage for, was something that we would have concerns about. And that was raised with Mrs. Khan. And again, she said that her husband would be back at a certain time. I do believe that was on the Friday, and we discussed that Cheryl Topham said she would try and get an officer to come out on the Saturday to obtain that footage. So she did send an email out requesting that from the area sergeant. Unfortunately, as I said before, due to difficulties in policing, they weren't able to come out on that Saturday morning. Cheryl then actually left the role as the licensing officer, and I then took over in March as the first time that I've ever conducted this role. It's just worth mentioning within our department, there is a manager and there's 2 licensing officers. I myself cover the whole of Sheffield, except for the city centre, which is covered by my colleague Ian. From the beginning of March, neither Ian or John, my manager, had been in our office. due to holiday, and then the lockdown happened, and again due to their vulnerabilities, they have been isolating at home and are currently still isolating at home and shielding. So I do apologise that the I maybe wasn't as on it as I could have been to chase up the CCTV. But I would also argue that the premise were aware we wanted it for that date, and there was nothing stopping them from just downloading that onto a disk or a hard drive, a thumbstick, and keeping that safe so that when we could return to collect that, it would be available and it wouldn't be lost. And again, you know, they haven't made any contact with ourselves, or as I believe with Julie, to chase up that visit that we had in February with them. We have then had further, obviously again, when they did the visit and they found that they didn't have a refusals log again. I think that was quite disappointing in terms of when they did the visit in May of 2018, a refusals log was given then, and the importance of that was discussed at that meeting. So it is disappointing that come 18 months, or I think 21 months later, that they haven't actually implemented their own or made copies of forms that we gave them to continue doing that. And again, I would suggest that scraps of paper that could easily go missing and maybe aren't stored correctly is not really a sufficient and responsible way to conduct a refusals log. Again, for all the reasons that Julie said about being able to have a look at who's doing the refusals, who's not, and if there are any patterns of behaviour there. We did also then get a further report again in June of this year, and again that was about large quantities of alcohol to underage teenagers, and this is from a concerned person in the community, asking for us to investigate this. She's a mother of teenage children herself, and was very concerned by their knowledge that this store will sell them and their friends anything they want. They're not bothered, was a direct quote from that report. And in this time of difficulty, underage children are buying large amounts of alcohol here and taking it to areas to consume in large groups. And she was asking for us to investigate that to try and prevent that from happening. The premise was placed on our street safe document for visits. Again, unfortunately, we've had a number of staff throughout the whole police force shielding and working from home, not able to actually conduct as many visits. I certainly wasn't allowed to go out for a number of months because of the COVID restrictions that were in place. So I was relying on other people who've also had multiple other job roles placed upon them during this time to cover for other people. It's not an excuse, but it is a reason as to why the demand has been so much on the police force and other agencies that they haven't been able to get out and do any further checks. We were actually planning on doing an enforcement visit to a number of off-licence premises around that area on the 29th of March. But again, that had to be cancelled due to coronavirus. So this would have been a premise that we would have conducted an underage test purchase operation. But again, I'm reiterating myself here again, due to COVID, we're not being able to use underage children to do these test purchase operations. We're still not able to utilise them because it's not safe to do so and expect them to go into a premise due to the level of risk that that might then pose to them. So again, it's not something, these are things we would have done had coronavirus not been there. We would have conducted a number of test purchase operations over a period of time to check for compliance. I do believe that from just taking it back to the incident where the child was hospitalised back in February, from the description given, Miss Topham states that this is an Asian male aged 18 to 20 years and is believed to be one of the sons of Mr. and Mrs. Khan. So I would suggest that, you know, whether he's able to do checks on people, maybe with him being quite close to the age of people purchasing, is he strong enough person, or are they a strong enough people to follow through with the ID checks? Again, we've had no dealings with the premise, so I can't say who was working on those days and who wasn't to confirm that. I can say, though, that we do have a number of issues in the area around Bencliffe Park with youths, with fighting, underage drinking, and general antisocial behaviour, which is pretty much a stone's throw from this premise. I'm not suggesting that all or any of the issues are from this premise, but with what we've had reported, it would suggest that maybe they are contributing to some of those issues. And I would fully support the Julie Haig and from Safeguarding and all the other responsible authorities in this review process.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And over to you, Lisa, now for trading standards.
Thank you, Chair. So in December 2016, Trading Standards received a complaint from a member of the public alleging that the business was selling tobacco and other age-restricted products to underage children. And in response to this, an underage sales pack, a guidance pack, was sent out to the business, which is standard practice and will be sent out to all businesses who receive a complaint. The pack provides information enabling the business to combat underage selling of all age-restricted products, and it also includes a refusals register and staff training literature. The refusals register that is included is set out in a format that can evidence all the correct data needed. So it includes columns for the dates, the times, reasons, and the staff member who's conducted a refusal. On the 26th of June 2018, Trading Standards attempted to test purchase tobacco, and we're not out to, it wasn't in receipt of a complaint, it was part of a due diligence and profiling that we were doing. So we're not out to prove an offence there. So we use a young person who's just had a birthday, so they are actually a young adult, just turned 18. Obviously still look very young. This is in, as I said, in order to check the business is being vigilant and asking for the ID in accordance with their age verification policy, i.e. Challenge 25. Business on this occasion did sell the tobacco to the volunteer and did not ask for any identification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm going to ask if any councillors, members want to ask any questions on all three that we've just heard from. Has anybody got any questions for them? You can just indicate with your hands. No? Okay. Marie Claire, have you got any questions that you want to ask? No. So Chris, is there anything that you want to ask of any of those three?
Yes, please, Chair, with your leave. They'll be quick, though. I don't think they'll take very long. If I can start in the order which the ladies presented. So, Magna, if I could start with you, please. Just to clarify, the specific incidents cited in connection with hanging water stores are, the evidence for those is from the papers. You're not offering any corroboration or separate reports. Your letter is of a general nature over Sheffield, over your area, about all those facts and figures, and not particular to hanging water stores. And your service has never directly tried to engage with hanging water stores on any occasion at all. Thank you, Boo. If you're happy with head shakes and nods, thank you very much. Jarvis, I appreciate your comments and the fact that you took over this role sort of after the fact, and that's fine. But you said that in 2018, according to Miss Topham's visit, I think you said all reasonable measures were in place except for the refusal register. That is what you said, wasn't it?
Sorry, yes, that's from her report herself.
Thank you. Miss Haig, when she was giving her evidence, she made a statement that responsible operators, although there aren't conditions on the licence, it would show credit or some sort of due diligence for those operations to install things like, I think the example Miss Haig was talking about, CCTV. Would you agree with Miss Haig on that point?
Yes.
And so credit should be given to our client for all of those other measures, apart from the refusal register that would been in place in 2018 and 2020.
You mean for having the CCTV in place?
Well, I think the statement was a responsible operator would have those in, even though it wasn't licensed conditions. Would you agree with that statement, Ms. Jarvis? Is what I'm kind of asking.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you took over the role in March 2020. When you prepared this representation, did you look to see if there had been any alcohol test purchases at the site at all?
There was the, I do believe.
It was cigarettes, I know, in 2018 as well.
Yeah, there was the 2018 one. Just bear with me a second. I'm trying to read through what I've written, what we've got. Bear with me a second. I believe the last time there was a test purchase by police was back in 2013, which is quite a time away ago.
Yeah, and I take it that the premises passed.
That was a test purchase passed back in 2013.
Okay, thank you very much. And no criticism attended of Ms. Topham or anybody here. Could I ask you a kind of a hypothetical question? And I appreciate it's hypothetical. You can qualify your answer as you see fit. If you were visiting the premises, it wasn't COVID, you were in person visiting the premises today, the conditions, there's no conditions in Annex 2 at all on the licence currently. Would it be your sort of operation or your operational practice to ask the premises to consider perhaps a minor variation to add conditions on?
There can be a number of different things that we can ask of a premise. So that would be something that we could ask them to voluntarily submit a variation of their licence to add conditions to their licence. Obviously, there is a cost implication to the premise for that, and that can be quite costly.
Yes.
So that necessarily wouldn't be the first course of action, because again, you know, we are trying to work with premises. We're not trying to penalise people and make them have to pay if that's not. So usually from myself, I can only talk from myself. I would be wanting to work with the premise to see if they can agree to adopt certain practices. If that didn't work and that approach failed, then I would then look to do an action plan to ask them. Again, an action plan is a voluntary action plan that they would have to sign up to doing, where we would ask for certain things to be done. And that would be reviewed over, again, various periods of time, depending on circumstances and the issues. And we'd be looking for obviously compliance. Then if we, you know, again, if that wasn't working, we could look at asking them to do the variation. And again, if that option didn't work, we would then consider reviewing the licence and taking it further.
Would the, again, this is, I'm proposing a position in my question, which you may not accept, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but a minor variation by converting certain measures to conditions on the licence. Do you see they have more significance and more force as opposed to operational practices if they are conditions because of the criminal consequences of breaching?
Yes, I would accept that that is, if it's on the licence, then it, like you say, it is more enforceable in terms of, but again, like I say, you know, we are aware of cost implications for people. So we would expect to people to voluntarily do things, and which we would then monitor. And again, it would be that kind of step, I think, would be a later step down the line after we've tried other avenues first. Again,
Okay.
you know, we're trying to reduce the costs, because we do appreciate, again, that running businesses is in this day and age especially, there are a lot of businesses that are struggling and financially. So we wouldn't want to impact on them if we didn't have to.
And I'm grateful for that clarification. I think that's a sensible approach. Thank you very much, Ms. Jarvis. And
Thank you.
then just Ms. Miles, just a couple of points of clarification, please, if you would. In your evidence, you said that the premises was operating at a challenge 25 status in 2016. Are you sure about that, or was that just a statement without evidence? Because my client's view was back in 2016 they were at 21, and following the tobacco issue they moved to 25. Is that something you wish to dispute, or was it a slip of the tongue?
Yes, Lisa.
I mentioned a challenge 25 just as being the most recent challenge, but whether they'd updated to challenge 25 or were still operating a challenge 21, the actual volunteer was just 18 and therefore should have been challenged for identification with either policy that was in place.
Right, so you're not contesting it was challenge 21 at the time of your purchase?
No, not at all.
And just absolutely clarifying, the test purchase, as you say, involved an adult buying cigarettes, who you subjectively say was...
Hence why there was no offence committed. It was just purely to get to see if they were complying.
Thank you very much.
Due diligence.
Thank you for coming on this afternoon and clarifying that. Thank you, Ms. Marsden.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So, right, we're now going to move over to you, Christopher, to give Mr. Khan's side. I presume it's you that's speaking.
It would be me, but are the other people who've made representations going before me, or is it? I'm glancing at my. If I'm happy to go now, I'm happy to go now if that suits you, Chair.
Sorry, Marie-Claire, the order is that, am I doing this in the correct order?
Yeah, that's whatever is the preference.
Okay. Well, if I go first, and then the residents can fix everything I say afterwards.
Right, okay.
Their input, I'm sure will be very helpful.
Okay.
It is the allegations outlined in Ms. Haig's statement are serious, and nothing in this presentation or in my client's actions would try and minimise or back away from the fact that persons under 18 should not be sold alcohol and not be able to purchase it by proxy from off-licensed premises. In respect of proxy purchases, that is a burden that, as a licensee, Mr. Khan has to accept. It's often a difficult thing to interrupt. He has to accept that on occasions people will show identification to him which is fraudulent, either an older sibling's legitimate piece of identification, or one of the excellent only in quality, shall I say, that not behind, but forgeries that one can pick up fairly quickly from the internet to disguise one's age. But these are the challenges that a licensee must take, and he, Mr. Khan, accepts those. The business with Mr. Khan as the kind of titular head has been operating since 1987, 33 years. And until 2018, the premises appears to have passed a test purchase, which Ms. Jarvis was kind enough to confirm, and had not come onto the official radar of licensing or any of these services before that date in connection with licensable activity. And that's very important. That cannot and should not be minimised. When you're making your decision this afternoon, if you likened it to scales and you're putting items on the scales and seeing where the balance is and what is your balanced approach, that 31 years of untroubled trading issue under the same management team must have some weight, and I would suggest it would be significant. In 2018, there's an allegation of potential sales to children. It sounds quite amazing that children in school uniform were being served, and certainly the authorities would raise that. You have seen in the papers collectively representations and references, 20 local residents of their own volition coming forward and saying and describing my client variously as a man of good character, as a useful member of the community, as a community-based individual. And 6 of those 20 letters give first-hand witness evidence that they have seen the premises conduct test purchases and ask for ID and refuse sales. No other evidence before you today is first-hand witness evidence to that type, none of it. It is a report and allegation that a 14-year-old did purchase their alcohol from there, but not that it was seen to have happened, and equally that somebody underage purchased alcohol from there, and that was their statements. I don't think it's helpful to go into whether these events did happen in exactly the way they signed. As Ms. Haig pointed out very helpfully in her evidence, part of her visit would have been to establish whether ID had been handed over, what had taken place. Had it been a proxy purchase, Ms. Haig was very fair to say that she couldn't do that, and that was part of her investigation, that it wasn't the visit in an attempt to entrap or collect evidence to damn the premises, but an open investigation to look at all of the facts. And we've heard repeatedly that unfortunately that CCTV, which was a voluntary system installed by my client at the premises, principally to monitor shoplifting and theft from the premises, not to monitor staff closely, because staff at this premises is family. It's the DPS is Mr. Khan's sister, and we've heard reference to Mrs. Khan, Mr. Khan's wife. Mr. and Mrs. Khan live at the venue. They live in the apartment above. It is their home, and the shop is essentially an extension of their home. It is true to say that the 2 or 3 of Mr. Khan's adult children have from time to time assisted in the premises, but Mr. Khan's always felt that to be very minimal, and principally Mr. Khan is there, he thinks, in his view, a vast majority of the time, and shares that duty with Akhtar, who is his sister, and DPS. Unfortunately, in February, when the authorities visited, Mr. Khan was abroad attending a funeral abroad for that period of time. He did return on the date stated, and the CCTV wasn't requested or made available or collected on that date for reasons as gone into. I don't think we can read into that anything other than the very reasonable explanations given by all authorities, the very strange times in which we are trading. But there is no allegation of any breach of condition. Although Ms. Jarvis did say there could have been opportunities to be more proactive by the venue, I'm glad she stopped short of suggesting that inactive was anything more than perhaps being lackadaisical and not being criminal or trying to hide evidence. That is not our position. The incidents that have come to Ms. Khan's attention through these reviews do give him concern. The allegation of a 14-year-old being hospitalised, it is shocking and disturbing to him. He is confident that no child has been knowingly sold alcohol in the premises, and that proxy purchases are something that we're aware of and that we try and combat as best we can. But it would be, I think, incredible and unbelievable for Mr. Khan to take the view that none of these incidents could have been associated with his premises and they never could have happened. That no premises reasonably could say that, and that is not our position. There are 2 threads of criticism of Mr. Khan, setting aside the incidents themselves. Although of the incidents, one sale is attributed to a young Asian gentleman between 18 and 20. And with the best one in the world, that isn't Mr. Khan as you see him today. There's no suggestion that he personally is being involved in underage sales, or in fact that the DPS has either. The criticisms are repeatedly, and when you look at your notes that I'm sure you've been making as you go along, about the refusal register and the format of the refusal register, and that it's inappropriate and it's not correct and it can't be used for these purposes. And then on the other hand, in February, they see evidence of refusals and test purchases asking for IDs in the month preceding. So the issue does seem to come down to largely a format of one document. Are they operating charge 25? There's no suggestion that they're not. The posters are up. The CCTVs in the system, they have a personal license in the form of DPS. Ms. Jarvis's description, drawing from Ms. Topham's statements, was all measures were in place in 2018 save for this refusal register. A matter of irritation, no doubt, and absolutely the refusal register as being proposed by the authorities is good practice and is best practice. But is that grounds for a review application? I would suggest not. Ms. Jarvis went through a very detailed and helpful explanation of how, in her role, she would engage with licensed premises and leading up to a review as a last resort. All of that has been brilliantly bypassed in this situation. And we have 2018 tobacco sale, doesn't attend course, no follow-up, not criticism, but that's 20 odd months ago. And then these allegations at the beginning of 2020 that span into 2 allegations in total during lockdown, and a review application is lodged. I appreciate everybody's hands are very difficult and tied at this time, but it does seem to me that several steps have been missed out. The allegations are serious. I do not deny that, and to have the interest of the authorities, but the measures not in place at the premises appear to sum up to a suitable refusal register. There are allegations on 2 occasions that, or excuse me, I won't say 2, there are multiple allegations in the papers that children have been able to purchase alcohol. Whether police have tested that, and they've only done it once in the last decade, that's shown not to be the case. The premises has clearly not been on the police's radar to require more frequent, although had COVID not come in, there may have been another test purchase. That's been denied to my client to an opportunity to prove themselves again. What we do provide you with, though, are many, many unsolicited representations from members of the community described by Ms. Goffers, all living in the vicinity and around the premises, talking about what a well-run premises is, the professional nature of the premises, and yes, it's convenience, but it's interesting. I thought the comments about convenience were fairly minor in the representations that you read. Much more were about the integrity of the management team there. And as I say, on at least 7 occasions separately in the papers that you have before you, the premises has been seen to be proactive in this issue of protecting children from harm and carrying out ID checks. It is our position that the letters sent during COVID regrettably were not received. The review hand was hand delivered. The response was immediate thereafter. My client has proposed a training document, which is I'll take you to in a moment, but that's supported also by enrolling on the safeguarding course preferenced by Juliet. And again, an excellent course, a free resource, and talking separately to my position here as a licensed lawyer for Mr. Khan, a great resource that people could attend, but often, and it is also true, often they don't attend for various reasons. So if I could take you to the papers, additional papers, I hope you've received a staff training and information booklet, which was served later today. So we had some discussion with Ms Haig, very helpful. I followed that up with an email. Ms Haig responded yesterday talking about training and what format it is. The training document I provide you is more in depth and a better resource, in my humble submission, than the personal license course. I teach the APLH course, as it's known. It's a full day affair, and it covers every aspect of legality about the Licensing Act, how to apply for a premises license, what is a licensing committee, how do we vary a license, closure orders, a whole range of subjects. Children and underage test purchasing is only a very modest part of the course because it covers a massive criteria. This document in front of you is focused on Challenge 25, training, testing, and bringing the staff members up to speed. We have incorporated the register to show the example that will be adopted by the premises, which obviously will be recognised by the responsible authorities as a promoted document from their side. Perhaps you may say, of the third time of asking, this is being inserted, but it's the third time of asking over since 2018. And there is evidence by those people bringing this review that in January 2020, tests were being taken place, they were testing, there was evidence of it, but just not in a format that they would like. I would suggest that, as is with the licensing conditions and the guidance, it's not a situation of one size fits all. And a refusal register of the type described, which can allow communication of a lot of details between unconnected staff shift people. So perhaps you work at Tesco's and you work at nights at Tesco's and you come on the day and you don't have any handover. That is a great register. It's helpful and it covers that details. But you have to look at the situation that we had at the Hanging Water stores in the context of a family-run business where all matters, including chances trying to buy alcohol underage, would have been discussed around the dinner table and addressed in that way. Perhaps too informal, and my client would accept that criticism and has therefore proposed a detailed training document, which all members of staff who will be involved in the sale of alcohol will be completing. Those were in total potentially 6 people, but principally 3 in Mr. Khan, Mrs. Khan, and Ms. Akhtar. In the bundle of papers provided earlier or later last week, at page 1 of that bundle, we've set out some additional conditions. These do not exist on the licence at the moment. There are no conditions whatsoever. That is a fact, and I think a positive fact, that this is what's known as a grandfather right licence. So it was a justice's licence in 2004-5. It was converted across to the premises licence. There was no objections, and under grandfather rights, it just continued. You may have noticed that the hours are a little bit unusual for things like Good Friday and Christmas Day. That's all hangovers from the old regime, but nothing in at least the 15 years since reform have there been reasons to revisit this licence. Again, please do not disregard that in your considerations. So if I can take you through those conditions that we would propose, I hope that they would fully address the issues of concern here, which are people underage able to get alcohol at the premises? Are staff well trained and versed in what the law is? So first of all, CCTV. It'll be installed, recordings will be retained for at least 28 days and made available to the police upon request in accordance with data protection principles which apply. It's very unusual for Mr. Khan to be out of the country. It's very unusual for Mr. Khan to be out of the country for an extended period of time. It was somewhat of a perfect storm that he was at a funeral abroad for a couple of weeks at the time this request was made. It is not normal. However, we've added a note there, not intended to become a condition, but a note drawn from an email that we're very pleased to speak with Ms. Jarvis, depending on your outcome today, on how that might be better facilitated, any advice the police may have in that regard. The premises will operate a Challenge 25 scheme. That's already in place. The responsible authorities accept it's already in place. This creates a condition and a requirement with criminal consequences if not followed through. It talks about refresher training on the Challenge 25 issue so that complacency does not set in and deals with it in condition 3. Condition 4, the refusal book. It's explicit now, and we would propose that would be sufficient to address the issues. And then a minimum of staff shall be either complete or booked upon to complete a course with safeguarding. Mr. Khan personally is intending to attend the course in October. He's booked on to do so. What this envisages is if Mr. Khan were to leave the business or somebody else who could have purchased the business and take over, that prior to that handover, they would at the very least have to be booked onto a course to be run. The courses are run fairly frequently, but again, slightly out of control of a private individual. So we'd ask the committee not to order a condition beyond that point. As I say, we've had a careful look through all of the papers. The allegations are of concern, but they don't tally with first-hand eyewitness accounts unsolicited and delivered to the committee. The repeated failing on a practical point is the refusal register. That is the practical failing. That is the only one highlighted. And after that is a point about engagement. And although it may be unsatisfactory, our position is that the authorities have always been entertained openly when they come to the premises. They are an open and operating business. The CCTV, through a collection of circumstance, wasn't provided on this occasion. I don't think it's fair to lay the blame at anybody's door in that. And after that, about the lack of engagement. Mr. Khan was somewhat surprised to be served with a review application from what he saw as a out of the blue sky. That is not to say that there wasn't a correct reason to have engagement, but I think, again, very well explained by Ms. Jarvis, most people would reasonably expect an escalation or a movement along a path which didn't seem, from his viewpoint, to have occurred. Nonetheless, we've tried to take a reasonable approach. We have offered these conditions to the authorities and asked for constructive criticism on those points, and we've not received any constructive criticism. I'm not suggesting that infers agreement to it. I think Ms. Haig's been very clear that that's not what's to be inferred, but the exercise of drafting and what is appropriate has been undertaken, and I think the wording of the conditions are normal, are professional, and what we'd expect for the committee to order in any event. I don't propose to take you through all of the representations, but I would like to say it's extremely unusual in my experience to see representations of a positive nature being submitted in support of a premises under review. It's surprising to see the number of unsolicited representations received. Mr. Khan has confided me that the number he would imagine could have been a lot higher had he chosen to ask and petition people to do so. But due to professional embarrassment of the situation, it's not been a matter that he's been promoting. It's a matter that's come to people's attention from the fact that there's a blue notice at the premises, and some people are more observant than others. He is a community man. He has been Sheffield born and bred. He has operated this premises for 30 plus years. He's raised a family at these premises. He has 3 children who have flourished and are Sheffield University students, and a young daughter still at school age. He would not like to think that his premises has this reputation It is not it's not a position that he promotes. And of everything, it's most shocking that a small number of people have suggested that is the reputation and how it's foreseen. He is a father, he's a businessman, he's a member of the community, and he would want to make it very clear to the committee that he does not take this issue lightly at all, and does not accept that anything he does or his family does seeks to promote a lax reputation where children can access alcohol. That is not the case whatsoever. I'll pause there. I have gone on for a while. I do have some points in summing up. I'd like an opportunity to sum up at the end, of course, but myself and Mr. Khan are here to answer questions that you may have, and I appreciate there will be some arising from the papers.
Thank you. I'm going to now go to Vicky Tulip to, if she wants to speak and put her case across, and then I'll come to you, Paul Baxter Gibson.
Hang on, yeah. Sorry, my son's just come home from school, so
that's okay, no problem. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm a teacher. I am a parent of a 16-year-old, and I've lived in Nether Green since 1991. And I wrote in support of Bash, Mr. Khan's premises, because never have I witnessed in all the years of using his shop and knowing the local community had or seen any problem with his premises at all, and was very, very surprised that, you know, those sort of allegations had come about. I have always found Bash and his family and the shop to be very professionally run, to be very well managed. I've never witnessed young children going and buying alcohol. I am, as I said, a mother of a 16-year-old who I know, you know, we've had discussions about it. I know that he hasn't, say, been going down to Endcliffe Park during such times. I know that it just is not the reputation of our local shop that I would expect to see. And as a teacher and sort of, you know, going around in the local area, it isn't a premises. I'm a supply teacher. I work all over Sheffield. It isn't a shop where you see young kids hanging around. It isn't a place. So it's my alarm going off. It isn't a place where there is sort of disorder at all. It is not that sort of establishment. So that's sort of why I wanted to come on.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Over to you, Paul, if you want to give us your side.
Yeah, sorry, just taking you off mute. I think, and I hope I don't undo Christopher's eloquent words here, but I think one of the things that he mentioned, one of the things that I've listened to here is it sounds like that engagement was one of his key words, and the stakeholder buy-in there. As I said, I'm head of projects and program management for BT, and we work very peripatetically, and we have to constantly talk to people. We constantly have to drop in on people. And it sounds like there were some letters that were sent as a result of trying to get that stakeholder buy-in, but is that really the way to get stakeholder buy-in and really the way to get engagement? I think that's the first thing. I'm also a father, and I have a 13, nearly 14-year-old daughter, and I would absolutely trust that if she tried to go into Bash's shop, she would not get served. And one of the things that I heard from Catherine that really interested me was that South Yorkshire Police, and I get that Catherine at the time wasn't in the role, were called to the parents' house because of a report of underage sales, and they went to see Bash. But one of the things that I've never heard is, what did they say to the parents about their responsibilities to reinforce that as well? And I've heard from Julie about the training courses that they offer. I still don't know if they're mandatory or not, or people have to do those. I've not heard from Julie or even Magda about some of the initiatives that are ran in the community for kids around underage drinking. And I absolutely recognise the knock-on effects of underage drinking, the antisocial behaviour and all of those things as well. But again, it just seems like we're putting an awful lot of emphasis here on a licensee and a shopkeeper. And I can absolutely get it if there was some context. I.e., okay, Mr. Khan isn't supporting our local initiatives but I've not heard anything about the local initiatives or anything else that Mr. Khan isn't supporting. I think in one of the email that I put forward, I've got two very older stepdaughters, and one of them tried to go into Mr. Khan's shop with false ID. She was never successful. Admittedly, it was mine and her mother's responsibility to make sure that we reinforced to her that she shouldn't be trying to buy alcohol underage, and we did do that. I think I heard from Julie that you'll hear from myself and Vicky about the friendliness of the shop, and we don't want to lose the shop, but there's a Tesco Express just at the top of the road. And I don't always shop at Mr. Khan's shop. I shop at Tesco Express probably more than Mr. Khan's shop. But again, I go back to, and I've heard about antisocial behaviour in Incliffe Park. I live opposite Bingham Park. I've seen that antisocial behaviour. I've heard it at 11 o'clock at night. I absolutely recognise that it exists. But it exists from people that are coming from Ecclesall Road into the park. It doesn't exist from people coming from Mr. Khan's shop down to Ecclesall Road. I think in my email, I've said that Mr. Khan is very, very diligent. He is extremely diligent. Like I say, I would trust that if my daughter tried to buy alcohol underage at that shop, he would not serve her, and neither would his wife either. And again, I just want to reinforce that I've heard nothing about what we're doing here to address behaviours of children initiatives, but also parents' responsibilities to reinforce that as well. It's not all just about a licensee. I fully accept it's my responsibility as a parent to stop my daughter buying alcohol underage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. So I'm now opening it up to councillors for questions, members' questions. Have either of you got any questions you want to ask? Yes, Ruth?
I've got a question, I think it's for Chris Grant. You talked about unsolicited letters from members of the community that we've been provided with copies of. How did these members of the community know that the premises was under review? How are they made aware of this?
The blue notice, ma'am, that has to be posted at the premises during the course of the review. So as part of the process, a blue A4 notice must be printed and placed at the door of the premises. So anybody entering the premises can see that there's an application for review, outlines very briefly what the ground is, allows them to, or directs them where they can get further information, and states by which date that they should make a representation. And although it appears to me that these are either standard letters or emails that have been received in that period because they've been placed in as representations.
So there was nothing else on the premises that was asking people to write in support of this then?
Mr. Khan, can you confirm if you asked anybody directly? You need to take yourself off mute before you do so, Mr. Khan.
We can't hear you, you're on mute, Mr. Khan.
Take it off mute, Mr. Khan.
Hello. Yes, Chris. Yeah, Basharit Khan. Like you just said earlier, Chris, I didn't want to advertise this situation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been here over 30 years and I didn't want to advertise this situation. Clearly, the police have come and put these blue A4 letters in the area so people can write into you. Like I said, it wasn't my intention to advertise this because it doesn't look good on me and my family.
Okay, thank you.
So can you confirm then that there was nothing from you to ask people to write in support of your...
What I'm saying is the first time I knew about it is when the police come and put the posters up on the windows, and I have not advertised anything. Like Chris said, if I had, there probably would have been over 100 people in support.
Thank you.
Have you got any more questions, Ruth?
No, thank you.
Okay. Vicky, have you got any questions?
Just one at the moment, Chair. Could I ask you then, Mr. Khan, if you had put a poster up in your shop advertising what was happening and you got a lot of response from your customers, don't you think that that would have backed up your case a little bit?
Like I said to you, I've been here over 30 years. My family have been here over 5 years. My children. I didn't want to advertise this situation. Maybe I should have, but I didn't.
I think, Councillor, in my discussions, without wishing to put words in Mr. Collins, he just found it professionally embarrassing that the proceedings had been commenced. But there is a blue notice that has to go up in the venue as part of the regulation. I'm sure that Ms. Frankie would be able to outline that in retirement, that it's not a notice that my client puts up, it's a notice that is statutory.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ruth?
Is this the time of the meeting where we can ask further questions of Mr. Khan, or is that later on in the meeting?
No, you can do it now.
Okay. I'm just wanting to know, Mr. Khan, why you didn't choose to attend the training and why you didn't choose to supply the police with the CCTV footage when you returned from your trip abroad?
Right. When I returned from my trip abroad, I was clearly told by my wife that the police was going to see me in the next day or two.
Okay.
So I was expect them to visit me in the next. They said immediately as I arrive, they will come and see me. So I was expecting a visit from the police.
Okay, thank you. Why didn't you attend the training when you got the letter from Child Safeguarding?
At the same time, I was told the training was off till October 2020 because of the current situation.
Mr. Connor, it's not for me. I think the council is referring to the 2018 session that you didn't attend. Could you maybe give an explanation for that?
I like I said, I don't think I received the letters, but to my knowledge, I was told there was no training courses until October 2020 in the recent situation.
And can I ask why you didn't verify the age of children who were wearing school uniform?
I don't quite understand what you mean by that.
I seem to recall in the report that there was somebody reported you serving to children who are in school uniform.
That doesn't happen here. Me and my family, my children, were educated enough to realize that these children in school uniform are clearly not, 18 and over.
Thank you.
Have you got any more, Ruth?
No, that's it from me, thank you.
Thank you. Vicky, yes. Vicky.
Could we just go back to the child that finished up in hospital? Are you saying that that child didn't get alcohol from your shop?
What I'm saying is I wasn't here. And
Okay.
I've discussed it with my family and they agree that nobody gets served without identification. And
But
my
that's
eldest
not what
son,
I asked you, Mr. Khan.
sorry, could you tell me again?
I asked, could you give me some background then on who would have served that child alcohol, and did it come from your shop?
What we're saying is that children don't hang about around here. It's usually Ecclesall Road or Cross Pool. We don't have that problem around here. But I did question my family when I got to find out that this is what's happened. And clearly my family says we haven't served anybody underage. Now, the mum of the child did come into the shop and spoke to my eldest son and did disclose that the daughter does have false ID.
Okay. And I just wrote down earlier on, you did get a pack from Julie Haig with regards to safeguarding objectives. Did you read that pack at all?
When was that?
I don't know, but I remember Julie saying that she'd given you a pack, a safeguarding pack.
The only thing I received is by hand when Julie came into the store and hand delivered, and even then I didn't know that was Julie until I telephoned.
So did you read the pack that she gave you?
The review of the license, yes.
So that's the review application, Councillor. The position Mr. Khan stated, just for clarity, is that the correspondence before weren't received, that an application in hand was delivered and received certainly, and then I think the police did give Mrs. Khan some information, but the only thing that wasn't implemented from that information is the refusal register, i.e. the format of it. I would say not the principle, but the format of the register. That's the papers. I'm sure you'll carefully look through them again when you retire, but that's what I've pulled out from them.
That's all at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Rose?
It's about the refusals log. I know that we were told that Mrs. Khan and other members of the family kept refusals on bits of paper. Were these kept as a whole so that they could be supplied? I know Christopher Granite has said that it was the manner in which they were kept, which seems to be the issue. So I'm wanting to know where these bits of paper were kept and were they able to be provided so that they could see, we could see, or whoever was inspecting could see clearly the number of refusals, the dates and who was serving. So that information may not have been available in a log, but it was available in another format.
Well, none of that information is a standard requirement, Council. I'll start off by saying none of that is a mandatory condition, but obviously best practice would suggest that a log could be kept. There's a number of measures for best practice in this case. That's the only one which my client has criticised. There is evidence from both the police and Ms. Haig that they saw, and they refer to them as bits of paper, which is a sort of derogatory term for perhaps a less sophisticated business that doesn't have access to printing and great internal documentation on this issue. But they were written down, those messages and information was being stored and collected for internal use only. There is no requirement currently on the licence, although we propose it going forward, adopting best practice, that these records should be produced in a certain format and retained and available for inspection. There is no allegation, or none can be substantiated, should I say, that they've breached any requirement in law, in the Act, on the licence to have those registers in one place. What the authorities say is they seem to be doing test purchases in the month immediately preceding our visit, but we didn't think they were keeping them in a very good format. And that is, I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but that is the extent of the criticism on those points. They're not saying they weren't doing Challenge 25. They're not saying that these notes that they saw were manufactured or false in any way. The criticism is formatting. As a man with a bit of OCD, and I like documents to look a certain way, that would irritate me a great deal. But it's what is behind the paper that we see. What we saw was lots of measures voluntarily in place and evidence that they were checking ID, making records of those checks as they went along, but just not storing them in a great format. That is not, I respectfully submit, the grounds for a review application. That's grounds for better engagement. And perhaps you may be critical of my client coming to you today with this in place now. But my criticism of the process is we've missed out an awful lot of steps before this review that would have addressed this issue, I think, more productively. You know, the terms working partnership that are often thrown around, and engagement, and they didn't engage. It's a two-way, it's working partnership. And for both sides, things could have been better, I would humbly say. Most of the issues, I think, here are principally down to COVID complications, which are absolutely nobody's fault around this screen today. But they certainly had no obligation to store or produce or record that information in any particular way. The criticism is we think they could have done it better, and they're now doing it better.
Thank you. Vicky, did you want to come back in with another question?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question with regards to the CCTV and your cellar door being locked. Is your cellar door always locked? And if so, why is it always locked?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, Mr. Khan, yes.
Yeah, the cellar door was locked, but it is accessible. But the room the CCTV system is in has a separate lock on it, which only I have access, because obviously I have children working here. We have, you know, money and cigarette on the premises.
Can I come in at that point? Just a further question, follow up from Vicky, really. One of my questions was, so if there'd been an incident, I take it you live on the premises, and there'll have been a key somewhere for that CCTV, because I'm just thinking, if you were away and there was, heaven forbid, but there was a burglary or a robbery of some kind, then you would have needed to give the police access to those premises, or you would have wanted to help, you know, hypothetically, if something had happened. So I'm just wondering what would have happened in that situation, and why the key, you couldn't have, knowing that we needed the CCTV, why you couldn't have given the key or told your wife where the key was, just for emergencies.
Yes, Chair. Like I said, this trip was an emergency. It wasn't a planned holiday, and it's a family-run business in a very good area where burglaries and thefts is minimum. So it didn't cross my mind to leave access.
I would suggest that you do that.
Absolutely, Chair. I think that's one of the conditions that is in the harm that would have been suffered and is being suffering here is the fact that it is all being borne by my client, unfortunately. You know, it's being made into a significant issue. Yes, you're quite right. And it can easily be resolved. And the condition we're proposing makes that clear. And again, not preempting your decision whatsoever, but if you're minded to allow the licence to continue, I'd repeat to Ms Jarvis and to Mr Khan that they can certainly take any advice from police of how to make that accessible. But it is a fairly straightforward fix. I think, as you're suggesting, having a spare key available might be the easiest.
Just bear with me, because I've got 4 or 5 more questions myself now. So I'll just, can I just ask how many staff? So can I just establish how many staff you've got there and the ages of them? Because I know you've said, I think it's been said that you've got sons and they work there. And is it you and your wife as your sister? If you could just run through with me how many you've got and the ages of those staff.
Okay, there's me, myself. I'm 48.
Yeah.
There's my wife. I'm not very good with ages, but
no, but approximate. She's an adult. Yeah, I get that. That's fine.
Is that she's probably 45.
Yeah.
There's my sister, who's 52 approximately.
Yeah.
There's my eldest son, who's 24.
Right.
There's my other son, who's 19.
Yeah.
And there's my daughter, who's 20. But we're not saying they all work in the shop. They do help.
Right. And what's the frequency of your children helping in the shop? Who works there the majority of the time?
Myself, I've worked here since I was 18. My sister and my wife helps. And the children, you know, like it is these days, they don't really want to help.
Have they? So did I hear that they're at university or they're studying?
Yeah, my eldest son has done a degree in business and accountancy, and he's just qualified his master's.
Right.
My daughter is at university doing architecture, and my third son is in university doing business.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks for that. Just bear with me, because I can't read my own writing either when I'm writing. Oh yeah, so it has been said, I don't know if this is for Chris or Mr. Khan, but it has been said that there's been regular residents in the shop, and they've, you know, from the reports that we've got, that they've witnessed being asked for ID, that Mr. Khan's, him or his staff have asked for ID. If that was the case, I was concerned to hear that even if it was on a scrap of paper, there was only 2 cases on the scrap of paper. And I think one of the things that Julie said was she'd expect to see a lot more than that. And I would have thought around Christmas time as well. you know, refusals, I would have expected to see a log of a few more. And if residents are seeing that, they should all be logged, and that's the bit where I just want some clarity around.
The purpose of a log is twofold, principally, Chair, in licensing terms, or maybe three. One, it shows good practice and best practice, and there's no denying that situation. The second is to pass information between perhaps unconnected shifts or people who don't work together, to transfer and download information, so that if there is a, as suggested, a peak time or an individual being persistent, that can be identified. We would say that element of the refusal register is much more organic in this situation, because they were a family and they talk to each other constantly about business and what's going on, and Mr. Khan would tell his family about such and such, or that lad came in, or I did this, or and matters of that nature. And if there are warnings to be handed out, they would be handed out. The third, which Chair, I appreciate, I think you're alluding to, and it's quite right, is it's excellent due diligence. If my client had been in a position of having this refusal register in place for a year leading up to this, we could be providing those all appended nicely and neatly to the committee, and give confidence to Ms. Hague, who's looking at a, it's very interesting. It's this revert to truth issue or permanent skeptic. When you're in a position like Ms. Hague, you want to be fairly skeptical about issues and not always revert to truth and the easiest answer, because some of the issues that Ms. Hague deals with are terrible, and we can't turn a blind eye. But from Mr. Khan's point of view, he's not been running or collecting that information in a defensive due diligence manner. That's not been the purpose in the past. It's been about passing information and sharing it amongst the family. Certainly going forward, as proposed in my condition to the committee, that will become a helpful due diligence document. With hindsight, it would have been very useful to have today. We agree. But the fact is we're not, and we're not going to try and fabricate it or create it or retrofit it. The proposal is what we do tomorrow with this license, and we're trying to set that out very clearly for you.
Thank you. I've just got two more questions. There is a gap, like we said, there was 2018 and then 2020. So I just wondered, has there been any changes in staffing? Anybody new in 2019? I just wondered if there was any changes that somebody's left or come on board or anything like that in staffing.
No, I think that as I keep coming back, the gap is 1987 to 2018, no issues, and then 2018 to 2018 an issue, 2020 these two issues. The only we don't wish to focus on it, although Mr. Khan has provided me with extracts of his medical records. I haven't shared those with you because I think they're very, very personal, and nobody's suggesting that. But Mr. Khan has suffered some ill health at the turn of the year, which required some medical care and an operation. Nothing life-threatening, but certainly discomfort and impinged on his abilities generally. But that's all cleared up now altogether, and he's returning to full health. We're not saying that is, and the issues, the medical issues, were at a peak kind of post February, March time this year in any event. So we don't seek to use those as an excuse. The only significant life event was a bit of ill health in the recent year, but we're not suggesting that that's connected. We can't put a finger on why this summer there's been two allegations which contradict a lot of the other representations you received, but simply that these things do happen from time to time, and my client's response to that is measured and proper by the conditions.
Okay, thank you. My final question's about the training pack, really, and it looks comprehensive and great. My question is, it's got the refusals logging in and everything in there. Why should the committee have faith that it's going to be followed when they've been given the refusals log before? So I just want, to know why suddenly is it going to be followed now when they've been given copies of it on 3 occasions, I think, and it's not being followed.
Well, lots of, and again, Chair, if I may put that into context, that lots of advice that's come in have all been followed. And the committee and the responsible bodies all point to lots and different measures that have been followed. The challenge 21 to 25, CCTV, etc., etc. This particular issue was not seen as significant, as crucial as those other measures. And that's from my client's perception. They have not chosen not to do refusal register to be stubborn or to be difficult. As I'm somewhat surprised that this seems to be a very, very big focus in the papers. When you look down and you set aside allegations and suggestions, and you look at actually what did they fail to do, it was the refusal register in a format and the production of CCTV for reasons that everybody's been very fair to say were a combination of a perfect storm. The reason why these conditions will have extra gravitas now is the fact that they will have criminal consequences. They will have ramifications by coming conditions. Failure to operate the premises in accordance with these conditions can carry a prison sentence and or a fine. Mr. Khan will be having a very, very bad day if he went to prison for breaching a registered condition, but it is there. Certainly a fine. Certainly, if these issues persisted, which we don't anticipate they will, and we will call back, failure to have completed those registers would I'm sure, be looked at in a very dim light. So it's not that Mr. Khan has generally turned his back on all advice from the authorities. He would say he's generally adopted it all, but I don't like to use the word naivety. It's simply they did not appreciate the significance with which the authorities put this register about the format of keeping the information. It just didn't, that did not land. And that was a breakdown in communication between the parties, and Mr. Khan fully accepts his responsibility for that. But as it's clear now, it's going to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, have you got, either councillor got any further questions from officers asking? Are you both okay? Yeah. Right. So Mary Claire, have you got any questions you'd like to ask? No? Is Jane, have you got any questions to ask? Yes.
Hi, sorry. Mr. Khan, if I can address you personally, please. Earlier on in the meeting, you said that there was no other post received from Julie in the post at all, and you don't have any recollection of any post being received back from 2018 onwards regarding training or guidance packs or anything else that was submitted. Is that correct?
I've not said from 2018. I'm on about this last occasion.
But you stated that you'd never received information through from Julie regarding that as to why you didn't attend the training.
I'm just referring to this last occasion, not the 2018.
Okay, so in response to your annual fees that you pay every year, I can see it on the screen in front of me, you pay it on time. You've done very well with that. How is it that you know when to pay your annual fees?
Because it says it on the letter.
So you can accept that you receive a letter from us every year advising you in the post to pay your annual fee, which is exactly the same address that's on the letter that Julie Haig sent all her information from. Because we have exactly the same address on the system.
What address have you got? 87A?
Yeah, 87 and 87A, there's two different addresses.
Yeah, I think there's been some confusion with the two addresses.
Right, okay. But you can accept that you have received those annual fee letters because you said, you need to pay it because you get the letters.
I've been paying it for a long time, so I know where to go to pay it.
Okay, no further questions, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to summing up now. It's Julie first, yes? Yeah. So Julie, do you want to sum up then, please?
Thank you, Chair. To sum up, the Safeguarding Children Partnership holds licensees and the role they have in safeguarding children with some significance, because licensees have a legal duty under the Licensing Act, a duty bound to fulfil their responsibilities to protect children from harm. It's not the child's responsibility to protect children, it's the licensees when they're on licensed premises to demonstrate due diligence. And this means doing everything possible to prevent underage alcohol sales. We're fortunate in Sheffield, we find most operators engage with us positively. People generally do want to do everything they can, usually to protect children. They want to play their part in the community. We've heard some suggestions of blaming children or blaming parents. Children need to be protected until they become independent adults, and part of that process naturally involves children going out with their friends in the community without the supervision of their parents. Parents cannot and should not be with teenagers 24 hours a day, and that is why we have legislation like this and the core objectives in place. Doing everything possible isn't an onerous task. The responsible authorities, police trading standards, safeguarding, provide free support, free materials, free training. Most licensees, when they're in this position, which is in the position of scrutiny, immediately start to work with us. They recognise the importance of safeguarding. They want to resolve problems and improve their safeguarding practice. But we as responsible authorities cannot make licence holders and their designated premises supervisors engage if they're not willing to. If they don't take due diligence seriously, partnership fails. We can only get the stakeholder buy-in that Mr. Baxter Gibson refers to if the licensee is willing to cooperate with us. The face-to-face visits we do, the training we do, 15 years of it face-to-face. Positive engagement, we're available by telephone, by letter, by email. We are approachable and communicable. We only send letters out when we get no response or when we're backing up advice given or visits or telephone calls, or in this case, during COVID. We've had the respondent minimise the issues. We've seen a lot of suggestions to trivialise and minimise the issues, suggesting that this is all about refusals logs not being maintained. That's absolutely not the case. This is about management not recognising and responding to escalating safeguarding concerns. There are no conditions on the licence. Mr. Khan said he was surprised the situation has been escalated to a review. I'm not clear why it's come as a surprise in light of all of the correspondence and visits that have taken previously. Mr. Khan mentioned that he's spoken to, his wife did inform him that the visit had taken place by myself and Cheryl Topham. He's confirmed that today, and yet there's no explanation being given as to why he didn't respond to the request to contact me by telephone. The information was provided to Mrs. Khan. Mr. Khan's confirmed that was then passed on by Mrs. Khan to Mr. Khan. So I have no understanding still of why we have an issue in terms of engagement. The suggestion appears to be applied that engagement will come when the premises management are forced by a series of licence conditions to comply and to engage. And that leaves me with a concern that we don't have a recognition still of the importance of the community role, of the importance of compliance. I think had management shown a willingness, any sign of evidence that the operator has been willing to change without conditions being implemented, I would have had more reassurance than I currently do. Having heard all of the explanations and excuses, I still remained concerned that despite our best and sustained, and I would add genuine efforts to try to engage and improve practice, we've been met with a consistent disregard by the licence holder and DPS until this point. I would finally acknowledge that it can be difficult for family-run businesses to challenge practice. The boundaries aren't clear. If a manager is not able to challenge somebody because they're a family member or because it's a relative, that could actually be an issue in terms of whether the DPS is suitable or not to take on those responsibilities objectively. And for these reasons, we would ask the licensing committee to take positive action to address the concerns about the level of competence of management and staff at the premises. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so Chris, do you want an opportunity to sum up?
If I can go last, Chair, if I'm the last person to speak.
Is anybody else wanting to sum up? Make a comment? Oh yeah, Catherine.
Hi, yes. Just a couple of points in terms of, I think that there was some from Mr. Grunnett there that maybe some of these children are coming in with false IDs, and how are they meant to know if something's a false ID? But again, you know, there is training available from us where if, you know, these are issues that a premise is reporting, we can provide them with information on how they can identify false ID cards brought in by potentially children, and ways to combat that. We've done that at a number of premises where, you know, for a period of time, if it's an issue that they're having, that we've asked them to advertise that they'll only accept passports because they're a lot harder to falsify. So that there are, again, and these things are touched on in the training courses that are offered. I would suggest that maybe the issues since 2018 potentially are around, they have had 2 children become adults that are now involved in the sale of alcohol, which is the daughter at 20 who would have been 18 in 2018, and the son who's now 19 who would have been 17 turning 18 back in 2018, and obviously this year as well. Again, that's why the engagement with the responsible authorities is extremely important, because not only are the licence holders helping themselves, but they're helping the children and other members of the community by engaging with us and adopting best practice. And it did concern me a little bit where it was suggested that the only reason Mr. Khan would comply with these things that we've already discussed with him is if it was a licensable condition where he could then face prosecution. And I would suggest that you shouldn't be waiting to be prosecuted to comply with due diligence and being a responsible authority, responsible seller of alcohol. So that does concern me there. Sorry. And again, you know, I know we do talk about the ID log for the refusals, and it is important because that, again, that helps protect the premise. So we come in, we've got these reports, and you know, sometimes reports are falsified, sometimes they're very valid, and it does help for them to prove that they are doing what they should be doing. And I would suggest that it is actually a very vital part of being a responsible licensee to have the correct things in place to log and record whether you're a family or you're not a family. And again, you know, we have given that advice on 2 separate occasions that South Yorkshire Police have engaged with the premise. And again, that would help identify, well, which member of the 6 family members is the consistent person who is maybe not asking. So again, you know, is that the confidence of a young 19, 20-year-old having the confidence to challenge other people of a similar age? You know, so again, it's about them doing things to help protect themselves as well as the children. And it did concern me slightly from Mr. Baxter Gibson's statement there that it is the responsibility of parents and the children to do that for themselves. And you know, with all the goodwill in the world, you know, I would say I'm a very good mother and I have these conversations with my children because of the jobs that I do. But I have no control over what my children then get persuaded to do with their friends or what they decide to do outside of our home and the decisions that they make. And it is down to the responsible authorities to engage with licensees and for the licensees to engage back to help prevent those things. And not every child has a good, decent parent at home giving them that good guidance. One of the children involved in some of the one of the reports we've had is a looked after child. you know, they are extremely vulnerable, and they are not always having the best advice and care because of the situations that backgrounds they've come from, and there isn't always that opportunity to have a good parent to provide that advice. So I found that quite concerning, that it's the responsibility of the child and not the licensee. And I just fully support Safeguarding's application and take positive action towards this premise for the failure to engage. And there is no reason why Mr. Khan had to wait until somebody came back to collect CCTV. He could have downloaded that himself and kept that until a suitable time where somebody could come and collect it. And that would have helped him in his case to provide evidence that it maybe wasn't him or his shop that sold that alcohol. So I would suggest that, you know, we've got a situation with a 14-year-old girl who has been hospitalised. She has said this is where she purchased it from. And again, we were unable to get all of the answers that we would have liked from that premise, which if they'd have engaged, we could have had. And if they'd have had a refusals book, we could have seen. And I would suggest as well that the slips of paper were from January. This visit was on the 19th of February. Again, there's been many weekends there where you would have expected, especially on Fridays and Saturday nights, where you would have refusals and you would have at least a couple a day, or at least a handful over a week's period. So where are those slips of paper for the February? So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want, Magna, do you want to, no? I guess, Lisa.
Yes, just to say that you mentioned about underage sales starting in 2018, just to say that our involvement was 2016 with the complaint, the sale, the age-restricted product, not alcohol, but still age-restricted in 2016. And the other point I'd like to make is Trading Standards assist in Julie Haig's free training event, and Trading Standards encourage proprietors of shops to fill out the refusals register when they have challenged as well, and to put down the reasons why they challenged, appropriate ID was seen, and they log those incidents also, which then benefits the shop owner in an event such as this, that they can prove that they did ask and were shown appropriate identification, and it shows then again doing both things, and that the appropriate sale was made, but you can evidence it in a case should this arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so it's over to you now, Chris, as the final one for summing up.
Thank you very much. It's been a long afternoon, and I shan't intend to keep you too long. Facts are, this is about a refusal register still, and in the summing up, we keep going on about the refusal register and essentially how it would have been great evidence for my client to have, and with hindsight, absolutely. No other criticisms of the client's operation at premises or missing or lacking points. I thought it's startling that that's still, after 2.5 hours, what we're still talking about. I feel that both Julie and Catherine's sort of discussion about Paul's comments were slightly twisted and not quite correct. My client, to be clear, does not move away from their responsibility as a license holder. And it is their responsibility to tackle underage test purchases, underage people trying to buy alcohol, and proxy purchases. I think, and I'm going to try and not fall into the same trap as Catherine and Julie, but what Ms. Baxter was saying was that it's not only that, in partnership working, there's also a role for parents in it. It doesn't supersede, it doesn't replace. It's just another role. And that's a very interesting point, not normally aired in licensing committees. but an interesting point, but no more than that. My client does not seek to suggest that any child who purchases alcohol is in any way that their responsibility is diminished in any way. There are allegations specified in the application about 2 instances. This is not a court of law. They can be put forward and you must weigh them as you do. Neither incident are reports from the individuals involved, but what we would call in legal terms hearsay about such and such told me that this is what they did. And neither of those individuals have felt moved or probably to file a representation to come along and repeat those allegations to date. My client's position is that no child or underage person is knowingly sold alcohol at the premises, or that proxy purchases knowingly take place, that they are vigilant of that matter. That is their position. We are not stating that those incidents could never have possibly happened, but it is about what is my client's position in those regards, and I'm making that clear, that they abhor that and they understand that children under 18 should not be able to purchase or access alcohol for drinking on the street. That is their position. A fact is that a number of residents have given you other eyewitness accounts of my client adopting a challenging situation, challenging children for ID, seeing that and refusing sales where appropriate. They have seen that. Now, one is a serious allegation, one is a first eyewitness account, but you have to weigh these all together. I'm not asking you, and it is not my position, that a young girl was not hospitalized after drinking heavily. It's not my position. It's not my position that another young individual has drunk too much. That is not our position. But our position is that neither of those, if they were connected in any way to the premises, were knowingly undertaken. That my client or any member of his staff or family decided, I can get away with this, I'm going to sell that, I don't care. They're a member of this community, he's a family man, his children, although are of tender years, around about 18, are all university educated individuals, are intelligent, and have no misconception about the legal age. That is our position. So suggesting that they may be lackluster in some way, is it. My client has been accused repeatedly of no engagement, but in visits to the premises, one-on-one visits to the premises, no criticism, no suggestion that my clients were in any way create subterfuge or avoidance or anything but open. The lack of engagement is letters fired into the void were not responded to. That is the lack of engagement from my client. And that again has to be taken the view that my client's view is those letters simply weren't received. And there is a distinction of addresses. The shop address doesn't have a letterbox. 87A, which is the residential apartment, does have a letterbox. And letters going to these different matters are dealt with differently. That is it. It may sound convenient, and the authorities may wish it to infer that I'm suggesting it's convenient, therefore it is somehow less than true, but that is the position that we put before you. And that is it. Not that they've been out to site and had disagreements with them or anything of that nature. They've been out to site, they've seen the measures in place, except the refusal register was not in the format that they'd suggested. That is the sum of the criticism. The CCTV, my client was, they were told the date, the police knew the date, they were going to come back on that date, and they didn't show up. Though my client was ready and willing to open the CCTV and provide what he could at that stage. And again, at that stage when the police don't turn up, is it a suggestion that my client thinks, well, they obviously don't need it? A reasonable suggestion? With hindsight, absolutely. With hindsight, we should have downloaded everything we had, should have prepared for a review application coming over the hills. But really, businesses don't act like that. And Mr. Khan doesn't act like that because he's never been in a regulatory position and had his license threatened in 30 plus years. He sees himself as a member of this community and assisting the police not to defend himself, but to address issues in his community. That's what he thought he was doing, not preparing a defence to a threatening review application. I think that there is no other evidence than that in front of you today. I'm afraid it's a serious allegation which my client did engage with, but because letters weren't responded to, we're now at a review application. I would like you to think again about Ms. Jarvis's very eloquent explanation of the series of steps that she would normally implement leading up to a review, none of which Ms. Haig decided to adopt in this case. She fired letters into the void, and because we did not jump immediately, we got a review application. And a review application based on a lack of a refusal register in the format requested, and the fact that we hadn't attended a course on one occasion 2 years ago. The refusal register is now going to be in a correct format, and my client is booked onto that course. I would ask you to carefully consider the conditions that as we've outlined, and I would say that they are necessary and proportionate. When you retire now to consider it, one of the documents you will consider is the national guidance under section 182, which I know in particular the chair is familiar with because I have droned on about it many times before, but we appreciate the importance of this document and it's very helpful. Paragraphs 1.17, 10.10, 11.20 all talk about the case being dealt with on its merits and an appropriate response to the issues. This is not a punitive process. Your role is not to decide whether that sale took place and how we can punish them for it. Your role here is to decide what are the issues at hand, what are we being proposed with, and is that necessary and proportionate? And I believe that the conditions proposed, including the in-depth training document, addresses this issue fully and completely. Amongst the conditions or the responses that you can offer or you can put in, I'd like to draw your attention to 11.17, which is, in addition to conditions, a warning as to future conduct. It's not often used, and I think quite sadly not used, but you can, in your decision, if you elected to impose the conditions, also include a warning about engagement if you felt that that was a serious issue. A warning that would remain on the file and be relevant for future reviews of the license should they become necessary. We don't believe that they will. The suggestion is from my side, and nobody else has made any suggestions of what we could do alternatively, apart from positive action, which is not meaningless, but shall we say lacks detail, what we're actually asking for. I would suggest that the training program with 3-month refreshers would be valuable. That would mean that members of staff who are less frequently on the front line would be receiving that refresher and go for experience. A lot of issues about competency and a lot of issues about this refusal register. And perhaps you might be thinking about personal license holders, but before you go down a personal license holder condition or removing a DPS, there's no criticism of Miss Akhtar, who's the current DPS, in how she's conducted the premises or how she's engaged. She's never met Julie or Catherine or her predecessor. It's always been Mrs. Khan on the 2 or 3 occasions of the last 30 years that they've visited the premises. Miss Akhtar has never been spoken to, has a personal license, and as though taking the application at its highest, the suggestion was if it was a sale, it was by a young Asian gentleman. And I have to say that's not a hidden fact for this premises. It's well known that Mr. Khan and his family and his sons and daughters are involved in the shop. There's no details there, which I think is a smoking gun. I have a personal license, believe it or not. I sat the APLH course and I have the qualification. Who would be better operating this premises, me with a personal license or Mr. Khan with 30 plus years experience in his community and selling alcohol, who doesn't hold a personal license? A qualification is not, it does not trump experience. To be clear, the answer to that question is Mr. Khan. He would be much better at operating these places than I would. I would repeat that the conditions are necessary, they're appropriate, and I would like, as my final word, say we do not dismiss the seriousness of those allegations and we are responding appropriately to them. But it is my client's position, and it always has been, that alcohol is not knowingly sold directly or by proxy to children in those premises. That is their raison d'etre. But I presume every well-run premises has that, yet children still get access to alcohol time and again. It's a sad case, but that doesn't mean that the fight is hopeless or should stop. Thank you very much for your kind attention this afternoon. This hearing has gone on considerably longer than I expected, partly because Mr. Card couldn't get on with Zoom, even though we did have a practice meeting last week. Mr. Card still didn't get on to. Thank you very much for your patience this afternoon, and I would commend to you the positive action we would ask is the conditions as proposed and outlined in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Can I just ask one clarification? The two addresses we've been given, 78, 78A, are they owned by both are they both owned by you, Mr. Khan, or is one owned by somebody else? I'm just trying to establish.
78A is the upstairs residential accommodation where mail can be delivered. If you send something to to the other address, 87, the shop doesn't actually have a letterbox.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't wish to go into sort of detective work.
No, I just wanted to know whether they were both owned by Mr. Khan or whether it was different properties. Yes. That's fine. Thank you very much. So I'm now going over to Jane for options.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the options open to the committee today are to modify the conditions on the licence, to exclude a licensable activity from the scope of the licence, to remove the designated premises supervisor, suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, revoke the licence, or to reject the application for review.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that's joined today for your patience and for taking time, especially the residents as well. I mean, we do this quite regular, but for you it's different. So, but thank you very much for coming in, and to the officers. Thank you very much, everyone. So now we're going to go into private session and make a decision, and then Jane, depending on how long that takes us to do, we'll either send the information out this afternoon or tomorrow. So, Kate, if you can remove people from